If you've spent the last few evenings scrolling through endless listings, watching YouTubers dissect every spec sheet, and still feel that knot in your stomach because you're not sure which micro CNC will actually let you finish that gear train prototype without turning your garage into a junkyard, this review is going to clear that up. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've been in the hobby machining world long enough to know that the line between nice to have and must have gets blurry fast, especially when a machine promises the precision of a professional shop and a footprint that fits on a workbench. The PROXXON 222-7112 Microfresadora MF 70 Plus CNC sits right in that sweet spot for people who have already done a few projects on a drill press or a benchtop router and now want to step into true 3D milling without jumping straight into a multi-ton industrial mill. The biggest hesitation most of us feel is the fear of overpaying for a machine that looks impressive on paper but turns out to be a paperweight when you try to cut aluminium or brass. On the flip side, the cheaper kits that flood the market often leave you with a controller that crashes at the first sign of a complex toolpath, or a spindle that wobbles enough to ruin the very tolerances you're trying to achieve. What makes the MF70 different is that it's built by PROXXON, a brand that has been engineering precision tools in Spain for decades. That heritage shows up in the way the base feels when you place it on a sturdy bench. It's heavy enough to absorb the vibration of a 12mm carbide end mill, yet compact enough to slide under a standard workbench shelf. The integrated CNC controller isn't a stripped-down hobby board, it's a dedicated unit with a small LCD screen, jog wheels, and a USB port that talks directly to popular CAM software. In practice, that means you can design a small gearbox housing in Fusion 360, generate the code, pop the USB stick in, and the machine will follow the path without you needing to fiddle with third-party firmware. For anyone who's tired of the software won't talk to the machine headaches, that level of out-of-the-box compatibility is a real time saver. Let's talk about daily usability. The first thing you'll notice after unpacking, and this is where the delivery weight matters, is that the unit isn't something you can just fling onto a flimsy table and hope for the best. You'll need a solid work surface, ideally bolted to the floor or a heavy bench. Once it's anchored, the linear guide rails glide smoothly, and you can feel the difference between a cheap imported slide that rattles and the PROXXON's precision rails that stay quiet even at 5mm per minute feed rates. The spindle runs at up to 24,000 revolutions per minute, which is fast enough for most plastics, wood, and soft metals, but you'll quickly learn that the machine's 70mm travel in X, Y, and Z limits you to parts no larger than a typical pocket watch case. That's not a flaw, it's a design decision that keeps the frame rigid, but it does mean you need to plan your projects around that envelope. One hidden trade-off that only shows up after a few weeks of use is the coolant requirement for metalwork. The MF70 doesn't come with a built-in misting system, so if you want to mill brass or aluminium you'll need to set up a separate mist or flood system to keep the cutting temperature down. Most users who stick to plastics or PCB milling never notice this, but the moment you decide to dip into low-volume metal prototyping, you'll have an extra piece of equipment to buy and maintain. It's not a deal-breaker, but it's something that adds to the total cost of ownership that you don't see in the headline price. Now, who should buy this machine? If you're a seasoned hobbyist who has already mastered a handheld router, can read a basic code file, and have at least a modest budget for tooling, think a set of 1mm to 4mm carbide end mills, a few collets, and maybe a small vacuum extractor, the MF70 is a logical next step. It shines when you need repeatability. Imagine producing a batch of 10 identical miniature gear sets for a robotics competition. You load the same program, clamp the workpiece in the same position, and the machine repeats the exact same cuts with sub 0.1 mm deviation each time. That kind of consistency is hard to achieve with a manual mill or a handheld router, and it's where the CNC controller adds real value beyond just it can move in 3 axes. Conversely, if you're just dipping your toes into the world of digital fabrication and have never used a drill press, you might find the learning curve steeper than you'd like. The controller expects you to understand basics like work offsets, tool compensation, and safe feed rates. Jumping in without that foundation can lead to ruined workpieces, broken bits, and a lot of frustration. In that scenario, a simpler CNC router kit that